Metro TV, 30 seconds. Good afternoon, everybody. This meeting's being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Public Works Committee meeting. We have one item on the agenda today, and that is the snow event after action report. We have Wesley Sidnor and Bill Bell from Public Works to make the presentation. With that, I'll hand the floor over to you and allow you to introduce yourself and start your presentation. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Wes Sidnor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm supposed to tell who's here. I always forget to do that. So I am joined in chambers by Councilman Kevin Bratcher. I don't know why sitting here makes my mind go crazy. Councilwoman Krista Bast, joined by my co-chair Ken Herndon, Josie Raymond, and JP Lininger. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm Wes Sidnor. I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Public Works.
And Bill Bell, Director of DOT.
Excellent. And before we take off, I just wanted to recognize we have several snow team members in the audience today, and I just wanted to recognize them and just acknowledge the hard work that they did to address this event as well as other events. So just wanted to say thank you before we got started on that. Okay, so we're talking about Winter Storm Fern. For us, this was official storm event number 8 of the 25-26 season. So this storm hit the morning of January 24th. It was a prolonged event, most of the day on that Saturday, the 24th, into the 25th, and some into the 26th. And we'll get into the predictions leading into it, but according to National Weather Service, there was an estimate of between 6 and 8 inches across Jefferson County. And then following the event, which added some complications to the treatment of this event, was that we had 10 straight days below freezing after that ended on February 1st. So we had a long period below freezing that we were dealing with on top of the snow accumulation. And then we also, as another record, we had at least 17 days consecutively with at least 1 inch of snow on the ground. So a little bit about the snow team. Like I said, recognize some of these folks in the room, but we have a team of around 200 people across departments and divisions. We have obviously Public Works, you have Emergency Services, Parks and Rec, Codes and Regs, vacant properties in that, and then Fleet Services also supports this team. So the snow team is charged with treating 2,750 miles of roadway, which is divided and separated out into 111 routes to clear those across Metro. Those routes are designed to provide access to emergency routes, medical facilities, some schools, some employment areas, and then I know this will be a recurring theme in discussion and questions, but as you look at the snow routes, neighborhood streets are roads that are typically not included in those codified snow routes.
Okay. All right. After January 2025, the mayor authorized us to work with a consultant, DW Claunch, to review our snow removal operations. They made several recommendations, dozens of recommendations, and some of those the big ones that we did implement. We updated snow routes, upgraded the equipment that we used, enhanced coordination and communication with all of our partners and the public. We brined a lot. We've been brining a lot more, probably more this winter than we have in the last several years, which we believe has helped tremendously. We're also looking at exploring future technology upgrades, which we've already started a pilot, and that started on the swim side. Now we're ready to do that pilot on some vehicles in our East District, which is a turn-by-turn software. As far as staffing goes, we're almost at full staff. We've made it fleet and equipment investments, which were authorized by Metro Council, so thank you for that. We're able to buy several new tandem axle dumps, 16 new brine tanks, and the plow blades, which that definitely helps as well, including curb guards. Enhanced communication. I think we had, 3 or 4 days of public meetings or press conferences, social media, communication with Metro Council, and then also communication with our partners, KYTC, JCPS, TARC, and MSD. As far as the preparation before the storm, we definitely wanted to be proactive with this storm coming on. We started looking at this about 9 or 10 days ahead of time because we subscribe to a weather app. It's called Weather Sentry, and so we started looking at that a few days out. And then, of course, the forecast changes about 10 times in that time frame. So we have to be ready to pivot accordingly. And so we started brining on, Thursday, the 22nd, and then we brined about 900 lane miles, which is that is our brine route mileage. And then for this event, due to the temps, we did add magnesium chloride and molasses to the mix, which in those extreme cold temperatures, it prevented it from freezing and still did what it was supposed to do, prevent the precipitation from adhering to the asphalt. So before the storm, and this is something that was also recommended by Clonch Consultant, we contracted with Ashbrit, which they're the emergency debris removal company that we used for the flooding last year. And so they also do snow removal, which they were involved in January 2025. So we brought them in day one for this storm. I'm not sure they were involved on day one at the last storm, but we wanted to make sure they were this time around. They had 10 trucks, 20 drivers, and then I think we originally had them scheduled for 3 days. We kept them on an additional day, so 4 days total. We assigned them to help out with our existing trucks, so cleaning up intersections, turn lanes, and then as we started seeing pavement on Monday, and so we started directing the contractor trucks elsewhere as we received requests. All right.
Yeah, so talking about during the response to the event, we had the snow team. Like I said, we have 200 or so members of that team. So that's about 100 people working in 12 to 14-hour shifts, coverage, 24 hours a day. And that includes the operators, the people that are actually out in the plows, fighting that. That includes the mechanics that are keeping equipment up and running, As you all know, I'm sure that responding to an event like this takes a toll on the equipment and vehicles with the materials that we're using and just, fighting the snow. And so it takes a whole team to support that effort. Typically, a crew will start putting a plow down at about 2 inches, but we've tried to encourage folks to use their discretion and not wait. If they think that it could use a plow, go ahead and put it down and don't wait on us to give this, blanket direction to do that. Around the clock, we had at, one time, we probably had 60 Metro trucks and Metro vehicles on the road, and then, as Bill said, the 10 additional contractor vehicles on. So it takes a lot of time to clear a route. It takes several passes. You're doing the pass of, the lead-in, the prep, which is some treatment usually, and then as the snow falls, something that we've learned, and one of the things that was called out in the Clonch report and some discussions with others was don't wait for the snow to finish to start plowing. And so, it takes multiple times going through to get a road cleared, and then to make that basically from line to line, to make that passable and clear. Bill talked about the contractor support, and so, one of the things that we did pretty proactively is we did not wait, especially seeing some of the predictions coming in. We wanted to have additional resources to support our team on the ground early on, basically from moment zero of the event. And so we made that call to do that, in addition to a handful of like the problematic existing routes. We also went through a long process of looking at, what are some other areas and corridors that we need this team to focus on. I don't think it's I'm out of line here in saying that, in growing up and hearing about the '94 event, that there were some key employers in town that made comments about the snow ever. And so we wanted to make sure that we were providing access to places of employment, to emergency routes, and to other transportation hubs and medical types of facilities. And so the additional support helped us do that. And then on top of the standard snow treatment, we also worked with JCPS to try to proactively, one of the things that we looked at was, looking at the network of schools. How do we make connections from the snow routes that exist to schools around the county, whether they're JCPS or other schools? So we did some of that proactively, as well as worked with JCPS to hear, where are some of the spots around schools for carpool or bus lanes, and then also where are some of the bus drivers seeing issues, and we tried to coordinate with them and address those as we learned about them. Like I said, multi-agency response, several passes to get things clean on the main snow routes. We took, if you add all of the lanes and passes together, it's around almost 16,000 miles of roadway. So the equivalent of driving 2/3 of the way around the Earth. Mine that I like to use is if you started at the North Pole, went through the center of the Earth, went to the South Pole and back, that's about 16,000 miles. 11,000 tons of salt in this event, this single event. And so with the snow team and the conditions, this team worked for 200 hours, most of that consecutively during and after the event. We'll say for this event, we have treated more miles, plowed more miles than we ever have before. So one of the things I'd like to highlight is that, as I said before, this was the Fern event was Snow Event 8. We've had 2 more additional events since then. And so a couple of things that happened after the main treatment of the snow routes for Fern and Snow Event 8, we needed to replenish our salt domes. And so we have those facilities, across the county. We have long-term storage in the mega cavern, and so we had to take a couple of days to get salt out of the cavern and back up into domes so that we had that salt available for the next event. So on January 29th, we had another potential snowfall. January 31st, we treated bridges and overpasses ahead of light snowfall. Another round of prep and an event on February 2nd and February 6th. So sort of the takeaway from this is that, once we see another event coming, it's not a complete reset, but there's a little bit of resetting that, okay, we have to have salts and domes. We have to have the crews ready and the staff ready to treat another event on our snow routes.
And also note that a couple other small cities reached out to us, like J-Town, Shively, and we were able to sell them some salt. Not a lot, but just enough to get them through the event, and so at our cost. So, because we're nice guys. All right.
So a big part of this, and one of the some of the things that we've learned from past events, and some of the things that I know that we'll take carrying forward into future events, the communication, as Director Bell mentioned, we did daily press briefings for a while with other partners, with the mayor's office, and with Metro Council, and so we did those opportunities, had several media availabilities where we're going out in the field and showing what the fighting of the snow looks like, and then very, very heavy on the social media presence, and wanted to update our snow removal page on the website. And so one of the things that we've been discussing is, we show the snow routes, and we're trying to figure out and talk through ways to best express, okay, if you've treated this route a certain way, how many times have you treated it, and things like that. And then internally, one of the big achievements that I think we had several internal discussions as we went through the event day by day, talking about logistics, talking about staffing, seeing what other teams are experiencing as they're out there, where folks needed help as far as equipment or personnel or drivers. And so I think that helped us get through this and do it the most efficient way that we could. And then we also had a dashboard that we activated to sort of see where different divisions and different crews were completing passes and where they were at in their routes. And as I said, we also kept in communication with other partners around Metro.
Okay. Some realities and misconceptions. Neighborhood streets typically are not plowed during snow events. Our snow route prioritization is not based on economic activity, but instead it's based on traffic volume, crash history, et cetera. Staffing and equipment, we do have capacity. I mean, if we buy 20 more trucks, we've got to hire 40 more people. And so that's the reality of that. Expanding service areas means just that: staffing, equipment, funding, logistical coordination. And so selection criteria for routes, it must balance safety, access to schools, et cetera. We did and I guess I can comment on this now. You know, we've been asked, I think Councilwoman Chapel mentioned this in her newsletter about a secondary map. We kind of did that on the fly this time because it was a big event. We got a lot of suggestions from Metro Council, and we had to prioritize those. And so that's something we're looking at, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. Key successes. Like Wes mentioned, we treated and plowed more miles of roadway than any other event in the city's history. We had strong leadership and support by staff, including the mayor. Proactive preparation. We've been preparing for this since last April. So improved safety outcomes. There were 0 traffic-related fatalities during this event in the 2 weeks. Improved safety outcomes, that's what it is. Effective contractor oversight. We had one person dedicated to the contractor and doing the triage for this contractor, because if this contractor is sitting there, we're still paying them. So we wanted to make sure they were out constantly, and they were. Increased internal cooperation between all of our partners. Operational flexibility, which Wes mentioned discretion on when to drop the plow, and improved logistics. I mean, we had all of our partners were on board, in sync. We had several meetings throughout the event, before the event, and then the after action, of course. Key successes, clear communication, as I mentioned, stronger internal coordination, enhanced public tools such as the maps, and then we had directives from the mayor to keep the cars off of the emergency snow routes, and really the public helped out a lot in the first couple days. I mean, they listened and they stayed off the roadways. I drove by Kroger, I saw 5 cars in Kroger parking lot, which was unbelievable. So people did listen, and they did stay off the road for the most part. Opportunities for improvement. I think you can always improve communication and have consistent communication. Enhance the snow map. And part of that is technology. I know we made a request for turn-by-turn software or technology in the trucks. That will provide real-time information. So if you're looking on the map and you say, okay, this road has been plowed, and then you should look out and that road will be plowed. I know there was a delay this time because it has to be called in from the dispatch. It goes to the GIS team. The GIS team has to manually change that map. Evaluate fleet capacity, technology upgrades, contractor support. But I will say this, you know, as far as snow routes and adding streets, I think we'll see if we have this added technology, we may be able to add more routes because it will only make us more efficient, in my opinion. So, but anyway, I want to thank everyone for your support because I've seen a couple newsletters, and then we had the committee of the whole, and we did pass on to our teams that you guys gave us a unanimous applause, which we appreciate that.
All right, before I turn it over to my colleagues, I just wanted to make a few comments, and I had a couple of questions. The report out this year is so much better than last year, so thank you for that. And I attribute that to a few things. In any continuous improvement process, you got people, processes, and parts. You got a new leadership team. This is probably the first presentation I've seen since COVID where an organization that says we're fully staffed. So congratulations on that. That means you're almost
You're close.
fully staffed. But you didn't put up there, we're constrained by staff. So that means you're making it an attractive place to work, and you've closed the back door of people leaving because they're not happy in their job. I go out to the public works centers, and people are genuinely happy to be there. They like their jobs. So congratulations on that. Then the processes, you've gone over that and how much it's improved. And then the parts, you've got the new trucks and the contractors you brought on board. So those three things combined help to give you overall better systems. And I can say much better than last year, not as good as we're going to be next year. It's because we're going to keep improving this over and over. I would say, can you go back to the slide just prior to that one?
Yep.
One of my questions. This is a perfect picture for an opportunities for improvement slide. Those driveways where all the snow is plowed and piled up at the end of their driveway, we got to find a way to solve that problem. We're clearing the roads, but we're locking people in their houses. So I don't know how other cities do it, but maybe we can find out. And speaking of other cities, at least we're not Lexington.
Well, funny you mentioned that. We got a call from Lexington. Wes and I were on a call with their public works person, and she was asking for tips. And so I said, don't get ice. Don't ask for ice. I mean, I'm talking about the actual liquid, the frozen liquid. Yeah. All right. But no, we were interviewed by a Lexington TV station. So, and I made a point to say they had a different storm than we did. They had about an inch of ice. Luckily, we didn't have that. We had a fraction of ice, but we were able to deal with it. I think the thing that made the biggest difference is we were more proactive, getting out there, brining. I don't think they brined. I think they brined a little bit. But
Yeah, started working on it last January, to your point, and it was a better response under worse conditions. So thank you for that. In the queue, I have Councilman Bratcher up first.
Thank you. All my questions were answered. Good job. Everybody seems to be happy other than the secondary road people. But all my questions were answered in this presentation. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Chapel.
Oh, nice photos in your presentation, and congratulations on becoming our Public Works Director, Mr. Sidner, and, being thrown
Thank
into
you.
this gauntlet. So I hope that this has been fun for you.
It has.
But I'm sure that there's no one happier than y'all that the snow is melting. And I see a few of those icebergs that are lingering, but I know that they're going down, especially with the 70-degree days that we have coming up. Also, thanks to the contractors, I know that we've gotten a lot of responses from our constituents saying we asked you to plow a road, and of course, not all of them got plowed, but a lot of them did. And so thank you so very much for making that pivot. I know that that was difficult to do. And also, it is important to acknowledge that this is a lingering snow event. All of those days of sub-freezing temperatures is something that we really have to account for. And I think that this was the longest stretch since 2001 that we have had this many days below freezing. And I'd ask that Mark Weinberg fact check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So, Mr. Bell, you had talked about the primary and secondary routes. And again, this was a lingering snow event, and thank you for reading my newsletter. That was hot off the press last night. Could you kind of talk about that more? Because I know that, usually there's only a need for the primary, but what have you gathered from this snow event? Will there be a secondary map? And, I know that my office had submitted a lot of roads last year when we had talked about this in Public Works, and I feel like those roads would be mostly addressed on a secondary map. So could you speak to that?
Yeah, like you said, I don't think you would need to go to a secondary map on most storms, but storms like this one, and then like the 1994 storm, and, you know, it happens every 20-plus years or so that you would need to do that. I don't think it would be a bad idea to have a secondary map, but I think we have to prioritize, like we did, like the mayor spelled out, you know, it has to have grocery, medical, school, or something adjacent to that route. And I think Amy sent over a few, and we did pick, I think there was 2 or 3 that dealt with a school, and we hit those. And then there was a detour where I think the route on the snow map was closed due to the construction. And so we actually did roads all around there because that was the detour. And so that made total sense. But we had those contractors, we had them hopping, and they were hitting all those, because we probably had well over 100 requests. And so they hit most, if not all.
Yeah.
So, but yes, that's something we've been talking about internally.
100 requests from my office or from all of us?
No, it's all.
All? Oh, that sounds like a very low number. Yeah, now I'm mad. You should have done more of my streets.
I mean, you had 20%, but no. No, it was, I mean, maybe I'm understating, but I think we had well over 100.
Oh, yeah. And just to respond, Councilwoman, to the comment about the additional routes, I do want to, I know this came up in the committee of the whole, you know, once it's, you know, we're in the spring, I do want to revisit the snow routes, as Director Bell said, with additional technology. I think there will be some efficiencies there, and you know, it's one of those things, you know, as the world changes, the community changes, you know, the roads on the snow map probably need to change as well, to make sure that we are, you know, that we're providing coverage to where we need to be treating. And so I want to, I'll extend that invite, as we have in years past, to sit down with you all and look at your district, or look at the snow routes as a whole, and have that conversation.
My next question has to do with sidewalks, and I know the enforcement of clearing those would most likely fall on codes and regs. But that was a real complaint that we got this year, and people were really getting angry and also saying, well, if you have a law, why aren't you enforcing it? And so could you talk about maybe any conversations or collaboration efforts that you've had with codes and regs in enforcing that law at all?
Do you want to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've had, it is a challenge, obviously, to, as you know, and as you stated, that, you know, sidewalks not being cleared creates a challenge to those that absolutely are depending on that. We have had some high-level conversations on the enforcement of that. You know, I think one of the more, or one of the bigger opportunities that we might have is finding entities within the community that can help get those cleared for neighbors. And I know Bill jokes from time to time that, like, when we were growing up, there was a workforce that did that thing called, you know, Teenagers Around the Neighborhood. But you know, there are some groups that have been active in doing that. So I think if there's anything in concert with enforcement, there should be some discussion about, you know, are there some
I think it would be a
groups?
lot
Yeah.
easier to cite business owners for the sidewalks in front of their businesses. When you're talking about tens of thousands of individuals, to cite them, that's a tall order, and we need to, and that's one of the the questions, or it's one of the things we talked about. We did have a meeting about this kind of mid-event or towards the end of the event, because that was a big complaint that we heard. And we just need to figure out how to navigate that. We'd have to have an army of people citing tens of thousands of residents. And my suggestion was, we have plenty of high schools that these students, they need to get hours. Like my son had to get so many hours, like 20 hours of community service. This might be a perfect idea for them to get 8 hours, 6 hours in a day and help elderly or disabled folks, help them out with their driveways and sidewalks. And then deploy them with a chaperone and go around the city. So, that's something we can maybe talk to Goodwill about or some other partners about starting a program like that.
And one other sort of enforcement thing that we've talked about is, and we've experienced it and tried to correct it when we saw it, but there were entities, businesses, whoever there were plowing their properties or their parking lots and then just pushing it out into the street where we had, in some cases, just plowed. So trying to raise the enforcement level on some of that as well.
Sure, and I think education and before enforcement would probably be good.
Absolutely.
And in my newsletter, I did mention kind of a tiered approach. So making sure that we're enforcing businesses, large businesses and institutions first, and making sure that they're setting the model for that. I'll get into the weeds later with you about sidewalks because I have a few more questions, but I've got one more and then I'll jump back into the queue. I hope this is a short one. We heard multiple times that if Public Works had more money, they could do a better job at getting to those side streets. Of course, this is hopefully a one-off snow event, but they might become more commonplace as our world changes. And so is there a number that you all have that would have been more adequate for this last snow event? And, I guess maybe it's similar or not. What increases in your budget would you be looking for in fiscal year 27 to support another snow event?
Yeah, so in terms of number, it's a little hard to quantify. I mean, if you look at pure mileage, there's between 5 and 7 times as many just overall road miles in the county versus what's on the snow route. There's probably a huge expense for not just the staffing and the equipment that would be needed to do it. And I'm not trying to spin this as just purely negative, but the salt expense to do that would be significant. And so just based on this event, I mean, that 11,000 tons of salt that we used, primarily on snow routes, some secondary. I mean, that if you take $90 a ton, that's close to $1 million in salt just for this event. So there's those considerations, and I think the other things that we would have to think about and think through are the logistics of plowing and treating neighborhood streets. You don't want to, as the chairman said, you look at this picture on the screen and you have driveways that are potentially being snowed in. That obviously gets escalated if you're in neighborhoods. And then, we have equipment that is not necessarily designed to be on a neighborhood street, especially if you have, cars parked on both sides. So not to say that it couldn't be done with enough investment in the right equipment, but there are some challenges with doing that.
Yeah, you'd have personnel and equipment challenges. I did reach out to Cincinnati, St. Louis, and some other cities that are, what I would say peer cities, and asked them what they do about the neighborhood streets, and they said nothing. So they don't do anything. But I did, when I talked to one of them, they said they absolutely cite everybody for not scraping or not shoveling the sidewalks. So, but it was a city, I think it was, might have been Detroit, where they get a lot more snow than us, so.
There you go. Councilman Herndon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of follow-ups over here about this, about the sidewalk clearing. Obviously, an infirmed senior in a random street in a random neighborhood can't get out and do her sidewalks, but then my district is laced with urban commercial corridors, and it has long been an epic failure of many of those businesses to do anything. They could, that's a smaller number of people who I think could and should get cited. I mean, not to pick on them, but they have staff, they have people, they draw people who want to do business there. I would advise letting them, making them understand what their responsibilities are and following through with that. There's a downtown hotel, I won't name, was on a corner, the front was perfect, and the side was impassable. They just, they did halfway. But we should insist that businesses on commercial corridors really follow through.
Sure.
The other thing was about and I got some calls too, why can't you guys just hire private contractors to finish the rest of your streets? And I would explain, I said, well, a lot of times a private contractor is a guy with a pickup truck with a blade on it. They're not sufficient to work on a public street, number one. Indemnification, all kinds of nightmares. But you mentioned earlier that you sold salt to Shively in J-Town. This may not ever happen, but if they got done with their streets and they had crews, professional, proper equipment, et cetera, is it practical or affordable to hire them to do some of our leftover streets, our neighborhood streets or whatever, and help clear that up? Has that been explored?
That's a good idea, and we're exploring things close to that, maybe borrowing from here and there, because I think, like one of our partners, they did twice as many passes as us, or as Public Works, so it might make sense to shift some of those plow drivers to the main routes, so. So yeah, I mean,
don't know. They may never get finished, but if they're taking 5 days of finishing, you need 8, then can we use them and afford to do so? I didn't know.
yeah, I mean, that's something we'll consider, for sure.
Well, and speaking of J-Town, so I have had a conversation with, and I hope they don't mind me sharing this, but had a conversation with their Public Works director, and there was a discussion about if helping each other out. If there's exactly your scenario, if there's a situation where they are, they're completely finished with their stuff and can help out, and there can be something arranged, they're willing to have that conversation. I think vice versa. As Director Bell mentioned, we, in the middle of the event, they were in need of salt. We were able to accommodate that. So, I think, and that would apply to all of the suburban cities. If there's a chance for us to work together and improve the overall community in addressing these events, then I think we're going to be open to doing that.
And I'll say too, we all spoke to many people personally about this, and I have to say that to a person, they were all very kind. They were obviously calling because they were frustrated, but once we explained, here's how many miles, here's the tier system, whatever, they were all very understanding. I have to thank the public for that, at least the ones I spoke to. We did, in the committee of the whole, talk about the potential for a cheat sheet, which would have been helpful for me. As I verbalized that to them, it would have been helpful for us to send out in advance even, here's what happens. Here's how many miles we have to cover. They wouldn't imagine how many miles. Here's what we do pre-event, salting and brining. Then once we start, here are the tiers, and here's what that means. So they can very often find their road in there, and they will understand pretty quickly where they are on the totem pole, and that may be helpful. Something like that would be helpful just to send out to everybody. And include, and here's what we don't do.
Yeah.
Private parking lots, HOAs, et cetera. So it explains to them in some detail on a single sheet, just to help them better understand before the event even happens. That might be helpful, just to, settle people a bit and inform them
Yeah.
more effectively.
Yeah, I love that idea, and getting back to Councilwoman Chapel's point about education, I think that's part of it too, is
Yeah.
educating, here's what Metro, the snow team does for Metro, here what other cities do, here are your responsibilities. But yeah, I think we can absolutely work on that.
Sure, thanks.
Some of that verbiage might be on our website already, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
It'd be nice if I had something in my office, it's coming in 2 days, here's
Right.
what to expect.
We will
Here's what
print
to
that.
know.
We'll print it for
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Yeah,
Or make something that's.
yeah, whatever,
that's
something pretty,
easy to translate
laminate it.
to
Yeah.
a newsletter,
sure,
for example, might be helpful. So yes, we can
thanks.
do that.
Anything else? Councilman Linder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to go ahead and echo everybody about, thanks to all of our Metro government employees that were part of this effort to take care of the city. I think that regardless of whatever else we talk about in here and how we can do better, we should absolutely recognize that the workers in Louisville Metro government really gave it their all, and we all really appreciate that. Kind of want to echo some comments that were made, when we talk about, generational snow events, we talked about a generational snow event last year. And so it's not just from 94 to here, we also had a significant snow event last year that really did have big impacts on the city. And I think that people are saying that we felt that we did, better this year maybe, we're not sure. But that, when we talk about, it was last year, it's this year, I think we need to put that idea of a generational snow event away from our minds and start thinking about what is this going to look like going forward. And so it's important that we are improving. And it sounds like, bottom line, an improvement in our snow response is not going to be possible without a personnel expansion. Am I correct about that?
Well, I mean, I think.
I mean, if for a leap forward, not tweaking at the edges, but if we're going to do more of a response, it will require a significant personnel expansion.
I think that's fair. Yes.
Okay. And when we talk about fully staffed, I think it's important that, members of the public that are paying attention to this hearing understand that we're talking about meeting the budgeted staffing when we talk about that we're approaching our fully staffed number. That's what we've put in the budget. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we're staffed to meet need. We said we want 300 employees in a department. We've got 298. We're getting pretty close to that number. That doesn't mean that we've correctly budgeted how many people we might need in a particular department. And I know that there's a lot of discussion about overcapacity in Public Works in order to meet this kind of event. I guess I question what overcapacity we see in Public Works when we look at a sidewalk list that we're on a 6-year or 5-year backlog, whichever it is at this point. We're tens of millions of dollars behind our deferred maintenance and the Parks for All plan. I feel that there's work to be done in the city. So I don't see it as an overcapacity issue. I see it as, have we met capacity in our budgeting? And then we would have the personnel that could meet those next 12-hour shifts safely, not being on the road when they're not, rested and not available. I guess that I would love to hear more about, if we had more capacity, what would we be addressing, 9, 10 months out of the year for Public Works, and then have that capacity for a snow event? It's a lot of comment and not as much question there, so I apologize. So let me get to a question. I also would love to know more about some of those discussions about the decision to not cite for sidewalk clearance, and I hear you on neighborhood entities for neighborhoods, but I would really love to hear more about what we can do for commercial properties and landlords. For landlord, for especially, when we talk about, I represent a majority renter district, many of the people that live in my district can't really own equipment to clear their sidewalks. This isn't a personal responsibility issue. They have their landlord has a responsibility to the safety of their residents that live there. To me, there is no, consideration of what is an undue burden. it's the landlord's responsibility. And so I would love to know more about what can we do to think about, even working down a tiered list of major holders, like what can we do about landlords and sidewalks?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Getting back to the previous discussion, I think part of this is education. Here are your responsibilities. Here are your responsibilities as a, as a landlord, as a business owner, as a commercial entity. And then, as part of that, what we were discussing, I think there needs to be some enhanced enforcement on those. If we get an event like this and that those obligations are not being met, then there needs to be some sort of corrective action done through enforcement.
Appreciate that. My next question is also a question of responsibility in our sidewalks and who ultimately are we holding accountable, and that's for our TARC stops. I live on 4th Street. The number 4 line is right outside of my house, and it is one of the best, public transit lines that we have in
Yep,
Louisville.
I agree.
And even with that, many of the stops that I could see in my neighborhood were completely inaccessible. I had people reaching out to me saying, the bus is having to block the intersection, pull over to an entirely different corner. My wheelchair can't even make it over there. Whose responsibility is it, the buck stops here, for our TARC stops being accessible during a snow event?
Yeah, so one of the conversations I've had even late last week was with Director Gibson, and we're going to get together pretty quickly to do an after action because, we did some work with, in coordination with TARC. We did turnarounds, we did try to hit all the routes, but the stops are definitely an opportunity for improvement. And so we're going to walk through that. What resources do we have during an event? What do they have, and how can we better create that accessibility for the community?
My last question, and then I'll get out of everybody else's way. Do we have any analysis now or plans for analysis for what this would have looked like if we had hit the predictions that we were seeing in the 24 hours before the event? Because we ended up 10 inches below what people were talking about. And of course, we still had some paralysis in this city. And people not being able to go to work, having to choose between supervision of their children and going to work. Have we done anything thinking about, like, well, if it had been that 18 inches, what would that have looked like?
We've had some high-level discussions about that, but I do think it is a good idea to, just like with any emergency planning and preparedness, to run through scenarios like that. One of the big conversations that we had was, the actual snow fighting itself might not look too much differently. You might have more, you would definitely have more passes. There would be a question of, once snow is plowed, what happens then? Where does that go? And then there's obviously the accessibility issues that come with having that much snow at one time in one place. So I think that would be a productive exercise for us to take on, is to look at, what are some, hopefully extreme scenarios that we could be faced with, and how do we need to be prepared for those types of events.
Yeah, I will say, one thing we were prepared to do, if we would have received, let's say, 16 inches of snow, Parks cleared us to haul snow to Cox's Park and dump it in the park. So that was one thing that we were prepared to do with that size of snow, but we didn't feel the need to do that with 6+ inches.
All right. Wes, Bill, it's always great to talk to you guys. Thank you.
You too.
Councilwoman Rui.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you for your efficiency and getting it all done and everybody working 12-hour days. I know you're exhausted and ready to go home. I appreciate when I put in some requests to get some of the neighborhood streets plowed, because the area that I'm speaking of is very dense and it's in a grid. And my objective was to ensure that, say, the streets that run east-west got plowed so that the neighbors on the north-south streets could get to the east-west streets. And I think we worked well on that, and I thank you for that. Excuse me. And as we look towards creating a possible list of secondary streets and a plan for that, I know it's going to be much more efficient if we have a plan ahead of time instead of doing it ad hoc. So they know to go up that street and then back down that, yeah. And you can get them all done at once. So appreciate that. One thing that was brought up as I talked to my legislative aide about this was that in these more dense urban neighborhoods, you also have people who are lower income, and their jobs are much more dependent on them getting to work versus people out in some of the wealthier areas of the county. They can work online and their jobs can still get done, and it's not as big an impact on them. So I don't know the possibility of this, but I would like us to consider some of the socioeconomic impacts of getting snowed in as we work on this some more.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Yep.
Want to apologize to my colleagues. My queue did not refresh, so I wasn't intentionally skipping over anybody. Councilwoman Raymond.
Thank you. I wondered. Thank you guys for being here. What a tricky job you have, because as soon as I felt it was appropriate that we were over the hump of the snow, I was reaching out about pool parking for the May grand opening for the Camp Taylor Water Park. Let me ask you a couple of things. So how do you handle those urgent requests from council people or others, right? So Councilwoman Chappell sent you a bunch. Councilwoman Rui sent you some, I sent you some, and we tried not to wear you out in District 10, right? It was only when a constituent said, I have a medical emergency or something like that. But I know that you're getting them from maybe 26 offices. And we're saying, go here, it's urgent, go here, it's urgent. How do you take those in and prioritize them?
Yeah, so we had staff that, some in the room here, that took a lot of those requests, and what we tried to do was find the connectivity to some of those, call them exemptions, but they're really what the snow route is based on. What's the access to emergency routes? What are is it, as we got into it, is it close to a school or a pathway to a school or part of the sort of the ancillary network around a school? Is there some access to like grocery stores, transportation hubs? We tried to filter it through that, and there were some situations that, for example, I think there was there were several or a few water main breaks, and so that caused us to have to, work with other partners to make sure that those streets were getting cleared, as well as, if there are detours off snow routes, trying to make those paths accessible. But to your point, there were, and we understand this, there were a lot of requests that came in, but we tried to prioritize and triage just based on those metrics. Is it part of a network to get to an emergency facility or a hospital or things like that?
Yeah, I appreciate that context. I took the department up on the snowplow ride-along in the fall. I know some others did too, and my driver, who is an absolutely incredible public servant, mentioned that last year he had the most instances of sort of being pulled off his route and said, go here, and he said he always wondered, who lives there? Right? And so we'd never want anyone to feel like others are getting different consideration or better consideration.
Sure.
And then my second question is, can you talk more about your relationship with JCPS? And this is probably a question you got at home, right? Whose responsibility is it to get the schools open? How does Public Works think about that? How do you work with the superintendent? I think folks were very patient and very kind in the first week, and I think parents got a lot less patient and a lot less kind in the second week as NTI went on and on. So can you talk to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so proactively, we tried to address, like, we looked at where schools were located, and as I said earlier, there were some even non-JCPS schools where we're trying to create access points. So, the first pass for us was, is the school on the snow route? Okay, good. Is it off the snow route? Okay, how do we create an accessible pathway from that school to a snow route? And then, as that evolved, it was getting feedback from JCPS on specific school locations, because most schools have where parents or car riders queue up for carpool in the morning and the afternoon. Same with the buses, and so we try to make those accessible. We had several conversations with JCPS leadership and some of their operational folks on where we needed to direct our efforts as far as clearing. I think it's mentioned in here somewhere there were at least 115 spots where we were responding to them on schools, on carpool routes, when buses came back and schools came back that second week, trying to get feedback through JCPS from drivers on where some spots that we needed to address with that. And so there was almost daily, multiple times a day, that we were talking to them about, how can we help provide the support that we need to allow you all to get kids back in school safely.
Yeah.
And the mayor was very involved also throughout that week, the first week, and even the weekend. And so they were pushing stuff to me and Wes and our team on different routes that needed to be hit. And also, I think Catholic schools went back on that Thursday of the week. So they only missed 3 days of in-person, which was amazing, I thought. But, we did hit a couple of those, like St. Raphael. I think we hit Lancashire, but there may have been a couple more. But they reached out to us. I think it was the Saturday or Sunday. They said, if you can hit these, we'll definitely be open on Monday. So we were like, all right, we're on it.
Okay.
So-
Any idea what percentage of our schools are on the snow route?
That's a great question.
Good question.
That would be a really interesting overlay.
Yeah.
Same with the JCPS bus routes and the snow route. Could I follow up on that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can follow up on that.
Okay, thank you, guys.
All right, we've got two more people in the queue, but I will ask you to keep in mind that we are over our allotted time. So if you can keep your comments and questions to a minimum, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Councilwoman Bast.
I'll be real quick. I just wanted to thank you all for being so responsive and direct to our emergency direct needs. And when we reached out, and it wasn't always the answer we wanted to hear, but at least we got the communication and we did receive an answer, which is a milestone from last year. So I know you're in one of those positions where you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But you guys did a phenomenal job on the main snow routes, getting those done very quickly. So thank you. Just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Chapel.
Yes, I think that these are two questions, but I think that they're going to be more requests because I don't know if you'll have these answers right off the top of your head. The first one, what was the total cost for the snow event? I know that you'd probably have to crunch some personnel hours. And I saw in a council person's newsletter the $1 million for salt. And I thought, where did they get that number? I'm sure that they talked to you all. But, you know, as you're talking about replenishing, we exhausted all of our salt. We sold a little bit, which mark that up. And then we, you know, we had to buy more. And so like, was that in the budget? Did we have enough of those kind of personnel hours? And I know, giving respect to a lot of what Councilman Lenninger said, it's difficult. But if we could kind of get a total cost for the snow event, and then how many trucks in total do you have? The presentation said 60, and how many of those would be the dump truck plows? How many would be pickup truck plows? And then how many would be material spreaders? And I think that something, and maybe a future conversation we could have in here, would be how do those trucks work when it's not snow season? Because I can't imagine that we have a whole fleet that's sitting around just waiting for it to snow. And so what is the duality of those trucks? And in some cases, they might wear multiple hats. So I would love to kind of get a better understanding of that.
Sure.
And then my last question, and I hope this will be an easy one, going back to sidewalks. Whose responsibility is it to clear the sidewalks along parks? I noticed a lot of parks in my district, even in Councilwoman Raymond's district, driving along Poplar Level Road and looking at George Rogers Clark Park. You know, we're telling people you need to clear your sidewalks, and Louisville Metro isn't even clearing their own. And so, you know, in looking at Louisville Metro, does that onus fall on Parks and Recs to clean those sidewalks, for example, or would it fall on Public Works to clear those?
I know downtown, Louisville Metro, in front of our buildings, we clear the sidewalks. We're responsible for that as the owners of that sidewalk, so we do clear those.
I'm proud. We finally coaxed Deputy Mayor George up. You held your tongue this entire time.
Good afternoon, Nicole George, Deputy Mayor of Public Health, Public Services. You bring up a very good point, which is the need to ensure our rights-of-ways are accessible in front of parks. I will say to parks, you know, a lot of their staff are members of the snow team. So first and foremost, they're also pulled to clear snow routes. And so for a lot of our staff, quite frankly, they're diverted to those efforts. And so I'll definitely take this feedback back in terms of what happens days after. But in those immediate days, that's where a lot of your park staff are focused. Thank you.
Is that it? All right. I have no one else in my queue. Again, much better than last year, not as good as next year. And speaking for Metro Council, we commit to work with you and the administration to make next year better than this year.
Thank you so
all.
much.
Thanks for your support. And one more time, we've got a great team, and you know, we're happy to have everybody on board, fully activated, and it was a good experience. Well, Wes, I mean, he just started, so
Yeah.
he had a really good experience. So.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank
And
you
with
all
that, we
so
are
much.
adjourned.
Absolutely.
people in our city, and for that, for everyone here from Humana, Joe, and the entire team, thank you all so much. So this is going to have really impactful influence in our community. We cannot continue to grow like we're growing. We can't continue to create good jobs. We can't continue to support families if we don't have a healthcare system that can treat and support us. And so having more nurses is so incredibly important. I love some of the other things that Humana is also doing around our community. The 3 primary care centers for seniors in West Louisville and Okolona and Dixie Highway, so that more people in our community can get care closer to home. That's critically important, and doing it for our seniors is even more important. And just as